Good morning. Awake? Okay, I got a way to put you to sleep. As you know me, I'm Steve Glanstein. By the way, that black belt was 50 years ago. So I've been practicing ever since, 24 years throwing policemen, so it was kind of fun. Not for them. Oh, just wanted, if you could turn to the handout, it's towards the back. Okay, if you do have a problem with Ambien or you need to sleep, there's a few solutions we have. Start off by reading your association's governing documents. If that doesn't do it, I know Roberts will conclude it for you. Guaranteed. Okay, it was so bad when I first studied, I'd write how much sleep I got, and Reconsider was worth about 2 hours on a Saturday. So it was just a really interesting practice. The practice is far more interesting. And then, of course, governing documents, you know, they can never have it all in a one-size-fits-all. They have to have amendments. And then some even cancel amendments. That gets really fun. But you gotta know that. You've gotta have that information in front of you. We're trying to avoid blunders in annual meetings. One of the worst things is when you go to the meeting and someone says, wait a second, that's the wrong number of directors. You got a set of bylaws and they got a set of bylaws. Which ones are correct? Now, how many of you are here from homeowner, planned community association, not condos, planned community association? Okay, do you know what the requirement is to record your documents for your bylaws at least? It's not. So what happens? Somebody comes up and they say, oh, well, we changed that 17 years ago. Didn't you get that amendment? Well, at least in the condo world, you can do a title search. It's much more difficult with planned community associations. So you have to know, you have to have that information, and generally there's a lot of knowledge that goes into planning for an annual meeting. Hopefully, if you're dealing with property managers, they know about posting requirements, posting information before they send out proxies and notices and things like that. I'm not going to get into too much of that. Let's see, how many people here are property managers? It's okay. Oh, we got a few. Okay, you got to post a notice. You got to post a notice if you're doing solicitations, if you're going to do proxies, things like that. You got to make sure you get that notice. It's not always easy with community associations, but you got to post it. I tell them just take a picture of it. And especially if you have the time, make sure it's there a couple of places. And make sure that you don't lose things in the mail. And that's really important because people have challenged meetings based upon improper notice. When you do something like 7 a.m. in a non-existent location in Kapiolani Boulevard, it's very embarrassing. Okay, people have made all sorts of mistakes on notices. Candidate statements, I had one recently I'm going to share with you. It says black text on white paper. That means no pictures, no porno, none of that stuff. Okay, but somebody provided a QR code. You know what a QR code is? It's a code you can scan from your... And so I thought, okay, wait a second, this is new. I haven't had this in 1,800 meetings. They want us to download some service pack from China. That was pretty cool. They're going to send that out to all these owners? I don't think so. Anyway, that got whited out or blacked out or whatever they did to it. But just so you know that those things do have their own sense of hazard with them. Yeah, I know, you just never know what's going to come up next, right? Okay, if you're incorporated, you got to watch. It gets a little bit more complicated for community associations, but I'll get into a little bit that if you're a board member. And let's see, I think most of your board members. Let me see a hands on the board members. Yeah, and how many of you get paid for being a board member? Just checking. Oh, there's one. Okay, there's a 10% differential for being the president, so you know how that is. A few things. How do you have a lousy annual meeting? How do you do a blunder? Make the room really small and then let the heat turn up. I know one individual who actually, we admonished him because that's exactly what he did in the mainland. As a parliamentarian, he would make sure they have the air conditioning turned off. No, I want him to have hypothermia. I don't want him to be unhappy with the sweating. I want him to, fall asleep because it's so cold. But I tend to enjoy the cold, but you want to have space. We've had them right next to the pool, so you have a busy street right next door and nobody can hear what's being said. What does that do to the owner's anger level? You're setting yourself up to have an annual meeting with trouble. Even if things are generally peaceful, people are going to be upset about it. The room logistics, you notice now here, look at how full the room is. Usually, first of all, I want to have a place where I can find the door, or get out of the crossfire. So I'm usually very aware of that. Why? Because if you have multiple entry points, people show up from all over the place. I've had meetings that they held in the lobby, things like that, and people are walking back and forth. It's very difficult to control. And so what happens when that activity is done? They lose control of the ballots. And one of the worst things that can happen is when 38 people are represented, 38 lots are represented, and yes and no totals 39. Okay? That's not a good thing. Okay? You don't want to be there. When it comes to an owner's list, it should be up to date. If you're self-managed, you have additional responsibilities, you've got to make sure that the owner's list is up to date. Handout control. Okay, if you got check-in tables, those handouts, who's controlling the room? Who secured the room? The board can secure it, or management secured it on behalf of the association. That means it's not just everything and anything that anybody wants out there. So kind of be careful of that, because that association is putting out handouts there. So be careful what's out there. I mentioned ballot control. When I first got into this practice, someone had one election ballot and 5 yes or no ballots, and they were not numbered. So I said to her, what is going to stop somebody from taking 5 yes and no ballots and voting 5 times on something? And she looked at me and she said, they're just not going to get any more ballots. You know you're in trouble, okay? Because what happens with the second motion? Oh, they don't get any ballots. The first one, yes and no, totals a lot more than the 38 that we had. So those things really, if I give you an anecdote, it's something that really happened. But the last time someone took a swing at me was here on Maui, just so you'll know. So he's out there. I didn't see him at the meeting here, so he's probably someone who needs a few of those handouts. So, or anger management. Okay, another one that there's usually a tug and push. I went to a meeting a week ago, and I flew out here, and I went out past Kaanapali, okay, for a meeting that had no quorum. Just imagine what that starts to cost the client. Think about the board members. I didn't want to go. If there was a way I could justify staying home and sleeping in, I would have. Okay. However, the problem was there's litigation, so nobody's taking a chance on anything or anybody, and because of that, I drove out there. Now, who's responsible for making sure we have a quorum? Is it the property manager? Is it the president, the board members? The individual owners are. That's their meeting. They're responsible for sending in either a proxy or showing up. When they don't, everybody suffers. I don't agree with the concept that you think there's been some thoughts about we can fine the owners for not sending in a proxy, and that's why we have lawyers and people get themselves in a lot of trouble doing those things. But you need a quorum that's realistic too. If you have an unrealistic quorum, then it's going to get very hard to get. You also got to consider, is it worth spending your personal time to start making phone calls to getting people to come out? I mean, we joke about putting a massive special assessment proposal on the proxy form, saying we need when you send your proxy and say, I'm in favor, I'm opposed to $50,000 special assessment to avoid having an increase in maintenance fees. So we'd ask that the owners please turn their proxies in as quickly as they can so the board knows when and how to oppose it. Now, you might walk into a removal proceeding at your annual meeting, okay, or assuming you survive that long, but you'll certainly have a quorum on the way out. You have to keep a sense of humor in this business. People stand up and they say they're going to fight to the death to keep their brown awning on your white building. In that case, I was an owner, so I told them, no, sir, we just fight to the foreclosure. That's it, we're done. When you're foreclosure, it's gone, you're out of here. And the brown awning came off the white building, and our legal fees were paid, as you might have imagined. I mean, we didn't have a choice, he had a choice, don't put the brown awning in the white building. Some of that's pretty cut and dry, but you'll find people will save their anger, their issues, for the whole year, and then they walk into the annual meeting. Okay, that does wonders to a marital relationship. And then they'll say, well, I want it to be an ohana. Everyone knows what ohana means, a family? Occasionally, I'll tell them that most murders happen in families. Keep that in mind. That line of discussion ends pretty quick, right? I mean, ask a policeman, what do they not want to go to? A domestic, right? The one the other day, a friend of mine got hurt. Domestic, that type of thing. Those are very dangerous. So we don't want that to happen to condominium association meetings, which means that we try to push people to take care of their issues with management, with the board, before the annual meeting. What does an annual meeting do? It does an election, it does a tax resolution, and then we go home. Well, we don't go home, we adjourn. Then they fight and yell and argue sometimes, and other times it's a done deal. It really depends. Most of the meetings in the state are peaceful. They don't have parliamentarians or lawyers. There's around 1,870, almost 1,900 condominium associations. I do about 100 a year with my own people, and, you know, so we know the other 17 or 1,800 are probably doing just fine, thank you. Okay, because I'm sure not going to go to all that. And I do have to keep a sense of humor with it, because despite the fact that it may be serious for somebody, you need to be able to manage a meeting, you need to be able to keep it going and get the business done. But I'll go back, I'm going to back up a little bit to the quorum problem. Okay, you have a deadline on Proxy, so when people walk in on the same day with proxies, it's not good for that meeting. And so you want to make sure that you have those things in time. Make sure that you know if you're not going to have a quorum, have a backup plan. I do have some groups, they haven't had a quorum for several years, and the board members just keep carrying over. Okay? And we've also had groups try to destroy the quorum by not showing up. I've had one who stays at the back who wants to know if there's a quorum or not, because she was going to play the yes or no quorum. I advise the admins that, can we see her? Yes. Can she hear us? Well, we don't know about whether she can hear us. We can hear her. People can see her. Take a quick picture and add her into the list. We have a quorum. She's there. She just didn't pick up her ballots. That doesn't have anything to do with it. She's got to sign, because that's a management process to make sure you got your ballots. But was she in the meeting? It's a simple yes or no. And so the show went on. After a while, what did she do? She came in and she sat down. Okay, we don't want to be held hostage to people like that, or somebody who has 30 or 40 proxies decides they're not going to turn them in to try to keep them on the board and force another year on the board. We've had that too. Okay, and if the owners find out who deliberately held the proxies, watch out, they might show up with pitchforks, because owners are not happy when they fly in. We've had people flying all over the world for meetings. No quorum, that's not real fun. Okay, now, what's the long-term solution? Have a realistic quorum. Been saying it for 30 years, have a realistic quorum. If you're something like Mililani Town Association Kauai with 17,000 homes, there is no way they could ever get 8,500, no. They have a lower quorum in their documents. They also have a mail ballot, and they managed to change the law instead of their bylaws. It was easier. And so they do a mail ballot, so they don't have that type of issue. Okay, what about canceling a meeting? Be careful about canceling a meeting. There's a principle here. When you give a notice of a meeting, you're protecting the whole association, telling everybody when it's coming. Okay, now the number of days notice, minimum of 14, maybe more, okay, those days actually protect people from changing of the notice. They actually have a certain protection. So just canceling the meeting may be a non-starter if it's less than the minimum days for the meeting. So be careful. Those are rights of absentees. Those are rights of people to know when the meeting is. People make plans. So even if you know there's no quorum, even if you've found a problem, consider, you tell everybody we're going to call it to order, we're going to continue it from this day to this other day. And we're going to go out and get things cleaned up or get more proxies, something like that. Let people know. Okay, if the quorum is lost during the meeting, it's normally presumed. But I think once in my life we deliberately destroyed the quorum for a reason. Because I wasn't on this side of the table, I was on that side, and the board on this side was going to try to amend the bylaws of the timeshare. So one way we stopped them was having my client leave. So they didn't have the higher number. They could still do business, but they couldn't change the documents. So that was a protective mechanism. But I wouldn't advise that as a daily basis. And if you're in an association, you want to have a realistic quorum. It's considered presumed. We presume we have a quorum unless there's something clear and convincing to the contrary. Okay, conducting the meeting, if you still can't sleep after you've read your documents, read Robert's 600-something pages, and that'll take a little bit of time. But we come into this now. The presidents of most associations, they don't have this knowledge of this huge book and all of that. If they're good, they've at least studied some parliamentary procedure, and they know a little bit about their documents, at least where to look stuff up. So you want to know who chairs. What if the whole board doesn't show? this has happened too. An owner can call it to order, elect a temporary chair, temporary secretary. They call them chair pro tem or secretary pro tem. So those are some of the options. Now, having property managers chair the meeting, if they want to take the risk, good luck. Okay, remember you heard something about hiring experts? Okay, well, there's a little bit more protection with the board. I would be a little bit concerned about some property managers chairing, especially because we give them some basic knowledge. Okay, however, chairing is a bit more of a risk. And the other one is sometimes the management contract comes up for approval in a condominium association, in an annual meeting. That happens occasionally. Well, are they supposed to chair it then? It affects them pretty directly through the company. So we tell them, look, if you're not going to get one of us, have them chair their own meeting. Have them get somebody who's a knowledgeable parliamentarian by them if they want to do that. Okay, a couple of other things we do to try to have some peaceful meetings. Anybody know what the debate limit is per speech if there's no rule? Does anyone know? It's 10 minutes. So just imagine if everybody here decided to take advantage of a 10-minute speech. Okay, please call me tomorrow evening, okay? The Gettysburg Address takes 1 minute and 40 seconds to speak. Unless I'm doing it, I can do it less, okay? And it lasted longer than any condominium speech, any community association speech. So you got to figure people are going to get tired of hearing it. So we've seen a lot of movement throughout the state where they cut the debate limit down to 2 minutes. They also tell people things that Roberts didn't have, like use a microphone. Things like that. Don't swear at each other, which Robert has hidden way in the back. So those rules, we try to get those adopted when people love each other, when they're a happy family, so that way, if it's not so happy, you've got the rules. You ever try to put rules in place while people are disputing everything? Okay, I've had one says yes, the other says no, it doesn't matter. They're trying to mimic the legislature or the Congress or something. So you want to be careful, and you want to make sure that you get those adopted. Another issue that's come up is who takes the minutes. Sometimes you have an outside company take the minutes, and who takes them? I have a reference down there on minutes. You might want to avail yourself of it. Make sure the minutes help protect your organization. Just have official actions. Not he said, she said, whatever was said. Just official actions. Okay, a couple more things in the time I've got on reports of officers. If you want to make a meeting go downhill, just make a 30-minute report and then go, any questions? You sure? Is there any way that we can make this go on and be painful for any more people? Okay. So there's another rule people don't know from Roberts, in that if there's a motion that relates to that report, it gets taken up right then and there. Wouldn't that be fun? We have another rule, don't delay the election. They get to the election. People come there to see who their new board is. So you want to be kind of careful about that. Have a report in writing. I once diffused an entire complex situation with questions. They were going to accuse the treasurer of things. Why? The reports were available when you checked in at the check-in desk. The next item of business is the appointment of tellers. And I just kept going. And I knew exactly what it was, because I had somebody else who was training for me. She was training, and she saw the mess that was going on in the back. And I found out later that they were just totally diffused. Why? Because the reports were there. There was nothing to debate about. There's proof for information. You're not adopting those reports. We don't adopt the treasurer's report. Okay, we adopt the auditor's report if it's presented and it's supposed to be there. Okay, treasurer's report doesn't get adopted subject to audit. You don't audit 12 months of treasurer's reports. You're not approving it, you don't express an opinion on it. Those are a few things. Nominations, I'm going to cut to in the little time I have left. Important to make sure people are eligible. We run into a lot of grief when you find out that somebody was married but they never made the title right. So, to make sure that's right. That's more of a property manager thing, but if you're self-managed, you need to make sure that's correct. Watch out for nominating speeches. They're not a web advertisement for your personal business. That's happened a few times. That can turn the meeting into some trouble, too. If you're going to slam the other person, the chair, someone needs to put a stop to it. The nominating speeches, why should this individual be nominated to the board? Not why that other person shouldn't, despite their fraud conviction. You just don't get into that. That happened too, many years ago. Okay, a few other things. Election terms. It's very embarrassing to mess up the terms. Okay, make sure the terms are right. And make sure the counting is right. Another one on the counting. Okay, there's some quick checks on that. Look, if you got 4 people running for 4 candidates, 4 positions, and you have 60% there, if you total everything up, it can't be more than 60 times 4. It's really simple. Okay, if you got yes and no, it can't be more than what's there. Just add the numbers together. If it is, get it right. Please don't call me the morning after, as I call it. Get it right, get it fixed. Even if you have to continue it, get it right. Okay, finally, because we're just out of time here, started a minute late, I guess, but get your tax resolution done from your CPA. None of us really want to be involved, be responsible for that. Have a CPA, bless it for everybody that you can, get it done. Anyway, there's a few other things there, but I think those are the key takeaways, and I wanted to make sure that you got the information. Thank you very much.